So good evening everybody. I think last 1 week or so we had a break in test discussion. So this week again we will resume our test discussions. We will wind up AST 7 and 8 discussions this week. Today we will have AST 7 discussion. AST 8 we will have on Saturday. On Saturday we will again have another 1 hour discussion of AST 8. We will discuss AST 7 today. And AST 7, this is mostly paper 2, first section. This is mostly paper 2, first section, section A. That is Indian anthropology. The discussion is mostly related to Indian anthropology. So before we go into specifics, we have to understand how paper 2 is different from paper 1. As you know, in paper 2, I keep telling students it is more like essay paper. It is more like a essay paper in the sense that in paper 2, we have to be generally more verbose. We have to be more explanatory in our opinions and our approach, and we have to support our content with examples. Unlike paper 1, you will have very few concepts. There will be few concepts, but more than concepts, these things, examples, explanatory, and like in essay what do? A topic is given, and usually for the topic, there is no fixed content by itself. The quantum of fixed content is limited. Beyond that, you have to evolve content as per the need and do analysis. So in paper 2, you'll have to do a lot of analysis. In paper 1, it is mostly a test of factual knowledge. Paper 1 is mostly a test of factual knowledge, whereas paper 2 is mostly about analysis. That is, some issue is given to you and you have to take that issue and discuss it at length, and that discussion will need examples, will need explanation, and though there is some fixed content, you need to build around that fixed content to cover different dimensions to the topic. And paper 2 is also dynamic in the sense that it has a good weightage of current affairs. So you can always link to current affairs and write. So how do you, many students have, some students have trouble with paper 2. So some students who are especially good at memorizing, who are good at facts, they sail through paper 1 easily, because in paper 1, once you have your facts, it's just about organizing those facts. That's it. In paper 1, we don't have a lot of analysis. It is just factual discussion. But paper 2 is mostly about analysis. That's why, just because it's not just memorizing some content and then dumping it, you have to touch different angles to the content. That's why it is difficult. So how do you do that? To do that, you need to work on what we can call as frames or frameworks. So take different topics and develop frameworks for those topics. That is, if this topic is given to me, roughly what are the 3-4 dimensions I will cover? Under each dimensions, sometimes there is fixed content under each dimension. Sometimes there is not much of fixed content. Then you have to see which angles you can touch. For example, for something like Varna and Jati, the content is fixed. You don't have much scope for original analysis. But something like change and continuity in caste system, their content is not completely fixed. There are certain things that you must definitely write. But over and beyond that, for changes and continuity in caste system, you can take a lot of original points, you can take a lot of contemporary examples and evolve your content. So you need to know basically what are the different dimensions I need to write. Under each dimensions, try to explain a little. Some students I saw in some scripts, they're just writing skeletal frameworks. That is, you're drawing, taking a heading and then you're drawing a chart lines and then writing 4 points like this. Just briefly, each point is written very, very, very briefly. Don't do that. Instead, what you must be doing is writing it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and try to explain each point at length. Explain each point at length. That is what you must be doing. Clear? That is how paper 2 is different, and to that extent paper 2 can be slightly verbose. Verbose in the sense that it is explanatory in its style. You must be able to explain in different angles. That's all. Otherwise, content-wise, paper 2 is not very tough. And for a lot of topics, you are struggling because there is no fixed content. You must learn how to develop broad frameworks for various topics. So take different topics and evolve broad frameworks for each of them. Clear? I'll show how this is done. So in this discussion today, more than content, I'll give you broad frameworks for each topic, because content is not so fixed and it can easily be assimilated. But a lot of you are struggling because you don't know how to organize your existing content as per the question's demands, right? We'll first begin with OBC. So what do you do about OBC? How do you structure this topic? First, discuss definition, who are OBCs, and then discuss, along with definition, discuss the position, their social position in Varna scheme. That is, who are these so-called OBCs? OBCs are the Shudra section in the Varna hierarchy. So you have Varna hierarchy where you have Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So most of the OBCs fall in the Shudra category. Then discuss the constitutional safeguards or constitutional articles relevant to them. Here you must give more emphasis to Article 340 especially, and the different backward class commission, Kalekar commission and Mandal commission, and then discuss reasons for their backwardness. What's the reasons for their backwardness, and what's the word that the constitution uses? Constitution uses the word socially and educationally backward. It doesn't use the word economic backwardness, but it uses the word social and educational backwardness. So use those, describe what is the reasons. One, their lower position in the Varna scheme. Because of that, they were not like untouchables, in the sense that they were not like Dalits who were completely discriminated, but though they were part of the larger society, caste society, they were at the bottom, because of which they experienced various disabilities and they experienced discrimination or limited access to education, other benefits of upper caste like ownership of property. All of these were limited, and that's the reason for their backwardness. And starting with the non-Brahmin movement, these people began to get voice. You can also discuss non-Brahmin movement here. And then after reasons, discuss the present scenario, or discuss the BC movement, backward classes movement, and link all of this to rise of caste in politics. Thanks to rise of caste in politics in 1980s, and thanks to Green Revolution, the backward classes became a strong political lobby, which they used this political power and rallied together to make more demands on state for affirmative action, and that led to Mandal Commission or the Mandal movement. So due to rise of caste in 1980s in politics and due to Green Revolution, backward classes became a strong political group and they began to use their political voice to make more demands on the state. So unlike Dalits, these are not completely discriminated. They had some voice, but they're using that voice to get even more benefits. And that's how Mandal movement started, and then conclude with Indira Sawhney judgment. How Indira Sawhney judgment sealed this issue of reservation and placed 27% cap, and also talked about creamy layer. And finally, in 2018, we had National Commission for Backward Classes, which was also established. And that's it. So close OBCs like this. Next, caste among non-Hindus. Here you can begin with intro, where you say, in India, caste is an Indian phenomena where it has spread to different religions which also were otherwise egalitarian, especially Islam and Christianity, which came to India from outside but then adopted caste-like structures. And then discuss how caste exists within broadly Christianity. Most of you wrote just this part. You talked about Christianity, you talked about Islam, Sikhism, these primary. And then focus on, after describing caste in each of the religion, focus on the status of converts, especially Dalit converts. Focus on the issue of Dalit converts. In most religions, Dalit converts to Islam and scheduled Christianity are not given SC status. If Dalits convert to Christianity or Islam, they are deprived of scheduled caste status. So discuss that issue. And then recently in last year, Supreme Court made some observations on this issue. It said, how can conversion be used as a restriction to deny them SC benefits? Instead, today Dalits who convert are given BC reservation, but they are not given SC reservation. So talk about that. And then discuss the findings of Ranganath Mishra Commission, and recently last year ex-CJI KG Balakrishnan Commission was also constituted. To look into how Dalit converts can be given reservation. So just discuss all these issues under caste among non-Hindus. And I also shared a handout, caste 1, on the course group that has more factual details about caste among non-Hindus. Third is caste and politics. Here most of your answers lacked examples and also proper structure. Like I said, in paper 2, a big problem for students is structuring your content, because paper 2, like I said, is essay. There is no fixed structure that you can mug up and write. Instead, you must take various PYQs, various topics, and prepare broad structures early on, or you must have the capacity to respond. Just like in essay, what do we do in essay? Once we know the topic that we are going to write, we pick a topic that we write, we sit down and frame a structure and try to organize all the content that we know in that structure. So the structure is generated on the spot. So for some questions, you can develop a framework before you go to the examination itself and go. For others, you need to look at the question and develop a framework on the spot. So the capacity to think of a topic, break it down in different subparts and write content is what is needed here. The next is caste and politics. So when you talk about caste and politics, you can begin with Rajni Kothari. If you look at the handout, I gave the views of Rajni Kothari, where he says in India, if you look at the handout, on the first page itself, you have Rajni Kothari on caste and politics, where he says there are 3 stages of how caste role in politics can be. After independence, 3 stages for caste. And then discuss caste and politics in terms of different areas, like caste-based parties. You have caste-based associations, caste-based movements, caste movements, and role of caste in party tickets, role of caste in funding, and caste-based mobilization. All of this. See how caste is being used in different ways in politics, and substantiate this with examples. Examples for each is very, very important. There are many examples. The earliest use of caste in politics is by Ambedkar, where he started a party called Republican Party of India. Then you had Bahujan Samaj Party, Samajwadi Party, and various, even before Republican Party of India, we have Justice Party in Tamil Nadu, Justice Party, Republican Party, BSP, Samajwadi Party. These are all examples of caste-based parties in India. Then examples, and then discuss the positives of this. How, because of caste-based politics, it is not completely negative, it is also positive, because thanks to castes, even the weaker sections, thanks to caste in politics, weaker sections are able to mobilize on the basis of caste and make demands on the state. Especially Dalit politics became a major issue thanks to role of caste in politics. So because of caste, we are able to raise the issues of social justice, especially of weaker sections. That is a positive. And then discuss negatives. That is how caste in politics can have many negative consequences. For example, it can lead to caste conflicts, caste violence. It can lead to strengthening of consolidation of dominant castes. So all of this, dominant caste violence, and it can lead to rise in inequalities as upper castes try to use to capture power more and more. And then finally conclude that on the whole, caste is playing a positive role because lower castes are able to effectively use the caste card to mobilize and make demands for social justice on the state. And that is why today, for example, Dalits are seen as a very important political pressure group by all parties. So that is how you can talk about caste and politics, and just try to make sure you include Rajni Kothari, discuss various contemporary examples. Next, Purusharthas. This is very easy. Very easy. First, define what is the definition of Purusharthas. Four important goals of life according to the traditional Indian social system, and then define and then describe the four. Describe four goals. So what is dharma, what is artha, what is kama, what is moksha, and then draw a diagram. So some of you drew the diagram, that is very good. Most of you drew, in fact, draw a diagram showing how Purusharthas are linked. So we draw that famous diagram is something like this, right? Where you have brahmacharya, and we have brahmacharya, grihastha stage, vanaprastha stage, and then finally sannyasa stage. So if somebody has good karma, somebody has bad karma, then you have rebirth. If somebody has good karma, oh, I'm sorry, this is a small mistake. You have the four stages: grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa, and then moksha. When do you get moksha? If you have good karma. If you don't have good karma, it is rebirth. Rebirth happens when you have bad karma. This is the general story. And then talk about the goals at each stage. For example, at brahmacharya stage, you have to focus most on dharma. At grihastha stage also you have dharma. Along with dharma, you also have to focus on artha, kama, and rina. Artha, dharma, rina, and dharma is driving force in all the stages. This is it. Draw this diagram and show how the various Purusharthas, basically what are we doing in this diagram? We are discussing how Purusharthas are connected to ashramas. We are discussing the relationship between these two. So draw this diagram and then discuss present relevance, how the various Purusharthas can be related and connected to the present day Indian society. Discuss the present relevance. That's it. Most of you did not write present relevance. So you can take many things, like for example, how in the present day in India, for example, in general there is social order, in general there is respect for family, in general society is characterized by charity, and there is less violence. in society despite poverty and illiteracy. All of this can probably be attributed to the traditional upbringing or traditional culture imbibed in people because of Purusharthas. Because of Purusharthas, we can say there is greater self-control in people in India, and because of that, we have in general better social order, and we require less external monitoring in terms of policing and punishment. That is Purusharthas. Then we can discuss about next is Varna and Jati. This is very easy question, very standard question. So define them and say M.N. Srinivas identified these two different first begin with M.N. Srinivas in intro, saying that these are two related concepts but have slight difference from one another, and then compare them. For comparison purpose, it is better if you can use a table, because table is a better way to do comparison, and then conclude. In conclusion, we will say Varna is the book view, Jati is more field view, and Jati is more relevant to understand Indian society than Varna scheme. And in table, you can discuss many things. Most of you wrote these factors, but some important factors were missed. For example, Varna, you should write, is a broad all India division. This is an all India division, but it is broad. This is regional but specific. Second, Varna is a reference category. Jati is a operational category. One is real, one is operational. Second, some of you missed criteria. So what is criteria? Varna is mostly based on ritual factors. It is mostly based on ritual factors, and this is mostly ascribed. Sorry, this is supposed to be achieved. This is not ritual, but this is economic and political factors. This is based on economic and political factors, and this is ascribed. That is the most important. And here in Varna, there is no mobility. This is another point where most of you are making blunders. Varna positions are fixed. That is, Brahmin is always at the top, Kshatriya below. That is fixed position. Whereas in Jati, it is not the case. In Jati, there is mobility through Sanskritization. But mobility is rare and difficult. So in Jati, we have mobility. Varna, there is no mobility. Then other points, like Varna 4 in number, Jati can be multiple. Varna is an all India thing, whereas Jati is a local. So the kind of Jatis we have is local, and so on. So discuss all these things and then draw the diagram showing fourfold division of Varna. That's it. Then the other most important question is 6. Changes and continuity in caste system. In fact, the handout that I shared, Caste and Politics, that handout has very detailed discussion of changes and continuity in caste system. You can actually look at it. It is there on page number 3. Page number 3, the last paragraph. It starts on page number 3 in the very end, and then most of the content you will see on page 4, 5 and 6. So if you look at page 4 onwards, you will have various pointers that deal with continuity, changes and continuity in caste. So first, here you begin with G.S. Ghurye and his caste, features of caste. G.S. Ghurye and his, according to him, the various features of caste. So according to G.S. Ghurye, we have different features of caste. Like for example, it is based on segmental division with hierarchy, segmental division of society with hierarchy, along with caste endogamy rules and restricted occupations with multiple set of disabilities and privileges, and restrictions on social intercourse. These are the traditional features of caste. Now, then talk about aspects. Aspects of first change, and then lastly continuity. Where do we see changes and where do we see some kind of continuity? And of course, before that you can talk about factors. Factors driving these changes. What are the different factors driving these changes? And then lastly, conclusion. What are the factors? Things like urbanization, industrialization, democratic politics, urbanization, industrialization, democratic politics, and reservations. All of these collectively played a very important role in bringing forward these different changes. And then talk about first changes. What are the changes in caste in different aspects? First, earlier caste disabilities, untouchability abolished by Article 17, and then in ritual sphere, caste role is declined because people no longer, you cannot have temple entry, you cannot have caste-based rituals and so on. In general, ritual role in society is decreasing and rituals are now seen more like a personal affair. Then 3, you can also talk about how occupations are now no longer linked to caste. So caste has lost its occupational role. And then endogamy and marriage. Caste is still plays an important role, but intercaste marriages are finding more acceptance. Then what are the other changes? Other important changes, reservations, that is measures reservations. Along with reservations, 6, welfare policies for lower castes. These are trying to promote the overall position of people who belong to lower caste. And along with welfare policies, reservations, welfare policies, you can also talk about other things, how caste is changing. That is, caste in politics. This is another major change. And caste-based movements, caste associations. And all this. This is the other important point. And food restrictions are no longer followed. Food and housing restrictions cannot be followed in cities. So these are the different changes. In fact, if you look at it, you will find some more points. If you look at the handout on page 6, social movements, caste associations, occupation system, political sphere, yes, economic sphere, ritual sphere, now complex division of labor, and yes, other is mobility. We have geographic and occupational mobility. All these are the different important changes that we notice in caste. But along with this, there are some continuity, that is, some old aspects of caste are still continuing. For example, untouchability is still practiced in subtle ways. Subtle ways of discrimination continues. How do we know? For example, most of the poor still tend to be Dalits, and here you can quote one survey by NCAER. According to NCAER survey, 27% of Indians still practice untouchability in one or the other form. Then, along with untouchability, you also have issues like occupation. In occupation, though caste doesn't play a high role, still occupations like priestcraft are still based on caste, and along with that, we can say upper caste still tend to do higher class occupations and lower castes are still reduced to labor and other occupations. 3. Though there is changes in endogamy, still in rural areas endogamy is practiced in a bigger sense, and in politics traditional caste institutions like Kap Panchayats still tend to have some role in political sphere. Then in ritual sphere also, though there is still decline, some decline in ritual sphere also, we see that caste try to promote caste-based religious symbols. So discuss all of this, and then did we miss anything? Mostly this, yes. So discuss this continuity in various different angles, and that's all. And finally, conclude by saying that in India, due to many of these forces, India is going through a flux where while caste is changing in some aspects, it is also retaining its old form in some other aspects. And going forward, we must make sure, though caste remains in Indian society, it must be used to promote justice rather than promote discrimination. Conclude by saying that caste identity must be used to play more of a positive role than of a negative role. Then NMS complex, this is very easy. So first, define it as given it by LP Vidyarthi. It is based on cultural ecological approach of Julian Stewart and all of that. And then discuss the different aspects of NMS complex, that is, what is nature, what is man, what is spirit. And here you take the example of Mahler, whom LP Vidyarthi studied. Discuss each of them. Draw the diagram showing different aspects. And discuss the relevance. In relevance, focus on its application mostly in the sphere of applied anthropology, how this can be used mostly in the context of applied anthropology, where we are using this concept to help us get better results in rehabilitation projects, in resettlement projects. We are also using NMS complex to make development projects more people friendly and reduce the impact of land alienation, displacement. And we are using this concept to also ensure that we take a completely holistic approach to forest conservation and to shape our forest policies when it comes to tribal people. That's it. Eighth question, most of you did not write up to the mark, so I will discuss eighth question in a little detail. This is Sanskritization. So most of your content for this answer was not up to the mark. We can do a lot to improve this. So how do you study Sanskritization? So the question is, discuss the concept of Sanskritization and its role in caste mobility. Examine its present relevance. Present relevance should be just like the last 25% of your answer, because present relevance is just can only be some 3 or 4 points. Some of you wrote present relevance in half, and some of you also wrote great lengthy discussions about caste mobility and what it means. No, caste mobility must be very brief. The focus must be on Sanskritization. So what is the structure for this? First, you begin with what is caste mobility. Say that in caste system, mobility is difficult and mobility is rare, but it does exist. And what is the nature of mobility in caste? In caste system, the nature of mobility is that it is group mobility and not individual mobility. So in caste system, the mobility is rare, and wherever it exists, that rare mobility is group mobility rather than being a individual mobility. Discuss caste mobility. And then talk about Sanskritization. So define Sanskritization. What is Sanskritization? Use the word emulation. Sanskritization is emulation of customs, processes and cultures of an upper caste by a lower caste with an intention to achieve mobility, So they have intention, but it is not guaranteed or automatic mobility. They only have an intention. So define Sanskritization as it is an intention or it is an effort, but not automatic mobility. When Sanskritization is successful, then mobility is an outcome, but mobility is not guaranteed. So It is emulation of a culture of an upper caste by a lower caste with an intention to achieve mobility. That is the definition. And then discuss the features of Sanskritization and discuss prerequisites briefly. Prerequisites must be very brief, and discuss impact. That's it. Features, prerequisites, impact. Features, some of you have had problem in understanding. So what are the features of Sanskritization? First, it is a group activity. Second, it is time consuming. Then there is no guarantee for mobility. Despite trying, you may fail, you may never achieve. So these are some of the features. It is a group activity, it is time consuming, there is no guarantee, and people like David Mendelbaum said Sanskritization acts as a safety valve for caste system. Safety valve for caste system. And what are the prerequisites? Prerequisites could be that some caste which is trying must have recent financial gains. It must have changed self-image, and along with this, it must also have, there should be no opposition from others. And what is the impact? In impact, discuss how when a caste Sanskritizes, it changes its religious practices, food practices, dressing practices, how women begin to experience disabilities, marriages and rituals become very elaborate, and they may also change their names, surnames. And finally, present relevance. Present relevance means today, thanks to reservation and the benefits given to those who are in lower position in caste system, today there is no intention, there is no desire for anybody to move up in caste system, but there is competition to move down. So today we are increasingly seeing de-Sanskritization because of reservation benefits. There is competition to claim backwardness. So today Sanskritization is not taken seriously anymore, and mobility in terms of caste is not desired, but people want economic mobility, and economic mobility is possible only if you have backwardness. So people are competing to be backward, hence there is no desire to move upwards in ritual sense. And also today people do emulate culture, but the emulation on culture is restricted to culture, and there is no intention to emulate with an intention to gain upper caste status, because upper caste status is now seen as a liability. So there is competition to be more lower in the caste hierarchy. That is how you can write 8. 9 and 10 are very simple if you know the structure. In fact, in my class notes, I have discussed both these concepts at length. So please try to look at my class notes and gain content for both impact of Christianity and impact of Islam. I have given adequate number of points for both these topics. So first, for Christianity, we have to discuss the intro. How the Christianity entered in India. It entered India in a formal sense by Saint Thomas the Apostle in 76 AD itself, but then it was limited to Kerala coast, that's all. But after the advent of Europeans and the British conquest of India, Christianity got more thrust because of the encouragement given by the British rulers and also missionary activity. And then discuss the impact in different sense. Social, what is the social impact? What is the religious impact? What is the economic impact? What is the political impact? And then in case of language, education, and any cultural impact. Discuss in these broad directions. And in fact, a lot of the discussion in these lines will be more like a summary of modern India. So the different changes that India went through in modern period. So the summary of the gist of all those changes we can write here. So in terms of social impact, you can write many things, like for example, thanks to Christianity, new ethnic elements like Anglo-Indians, French Indians were added to India. Even converted Christianity entered, and converted Christians began to also develop hierarchy. So we have Dalit Christians. And the most important thing that most of you missed is in social impact, please include westernization and modernization, because these two changes happened in India primarily due to Christianity. So westernization, modernization, and you can also talk about how, because of all of this, we had socio-religious. These points were mentioned by some. These are very important. Then religious, entry of Christianity, that is increase in materialism, and missionary activities, all of this happened. That is religious impact. Under economic, discuss the various changes like land revenue systems. Also, we had economic drain, that is a negative. Along with it, some infrastructural development happened, and urbanization process got kick-started. Under political impact, talk about changes like new political values entered India, like democracy, equality, justice, humanism, and political systems like federalism, democracy, republican form of government. All of these ideas entered India thanks to this period. And in language education, talk about English language and modern education, school education and college education. All of that happened due to this. And in cultural, talk about cultural contributions under British, like having Indo-Gothic architecture, Neo-Roman architectural styles, and all of this. That is how you can discuss the impact, and finally conclude by saying that in this, due to Christianity, today, though we have only 2% of Christian population in the country, the impact of Christianity is much larger, because Christianity was a source of westernization and modernization in India. That's it. Same thing for Islam. Follow the same structure where you write intro, and then we talk about we write intro, and then we discuss social impact, then we discuss religious impact, then economic, political, cultural, and lastly, present scenario. Intro, we can say Islam entered India with the Arab conquest of Sindh and with the activities of Muhammad Qasim in Sindh. And then with the conquest of the Mahmud of Ghazni, India came under Islamic rule with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate, and then followed by the Mughal rule. So start with that intro, and then talk about social impact. What is the social impact? New ethnic elements like Turkish, Persian entered India, and then India was also, in addition to the existing divides, a new divide in the form of Islam entered India. So religious division. Until then, India was largely a mono-religious society, but now a new religious divide entered into India due to Islam. Then converts of Islam also developed hierarchy. Hierarchy, like you had Ashrafs, Ajlafs, Arzals. Then talk about religion. Religious wise, here you must use some words like development of syncretic culture. Religious wise, new religious ideas entered India in this period. New religious ideas like monotheism, all of these entered India in this time thanks to the entry of Islam. Earlier, India did not have ideas like monotheism, absence of no idol worship, or worshipping through having systems like a prophet, a holy book, these kind of ideas entered India due to this religion. And due to the meeting of Islam and Hinduism, a syncretic culture developed, and under the influence of these, we had Bhakti movement, Sufi movement, Sikhism. All of these bear the syncretic elements of this contact. Discuss that. And economically, changes, land revenue systems, urbanization, trade, monetary economy, all of that got a thrust. Politically, you had a system, you had one all India identity was beginning to emerge thanks to the establishment of large empires, and also modern day administration can be traced to this period. Along with that, you can also talk about how many military techniques were evolved in this period, system of forts were built. Then culture, here you have a lot of things to write. Talk about Indo-Islamic culture, talk about emergence of Urdu language, systems of musical traditions like Qawwali, Hindustani music, and Unani medicine, gardening systems, all of those developed in this period. And finally, present scenario, we can say, though a syncretic culture developed in the initial period, during the modern era under colonial rule, the differences between Islam and Hinduism were used to kickstart communal divisions in India, and this divide is still going on. And today also due to democratic politics, communal polarization is increasingly being used for political purposes, and as a result, we also see increasing radicalization of youth, of minority youth by extremist agencies. And all of this is posing a threat to internal harmony in Indian society. And close it like that, right? So as you can see in paper 2, the key is to take any topic and identify what is the framework, and in the framework, try to explain your ideas and content with lively examples. That's it. No big deal, right? So with that, we will wind up this AST 7 discussion. On Saturday, we'll again meet for AST 8 discussion. I'll announce the exact time on the test series group. All right. Thank you for being here with me.